Brother stood at the head of the conference table like he owned the room. Which, he was about to argue, he did. She has been mismanaging the estate for 2 years, he said, his voice smooth and measured, the kind of voice you use when you've rehearsed something so many times, it stops sounding rehearsed. She is emotionally unstable, financially reckless, and frankly not equipped to handle what our mother left behind. He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at the mediator. I looked at my watch. 11 minutes. That was how long I had decided to let him talk before I opened the folder sitting in front of me. Have you ever sat completely still while someone dismantled your entire character to a room full of people, while they used your silence as proof of their point? Drop a yes in the comments if you know what that particular kind of quiet rage feels like. I want to know how many of us have learned to swallow it. My brother's name is Owen. He is 4 years older than me, 2 inches taller, and has spent the last 34 years of his life believing that being born first entitled him to everything that came after. When our mother passed 18 months ago, she left the family property in Oakville, a modest investment portfolio, and a trust structured specifically so that neither of us could touch the principal without the other's written consent. She did it on purpose. She knew exactly who Owen was. He hated that clause more than he hated anything else in his life. The estate mediation session had been his idea. He had called it a necessary conversation about protecting Mom's legacy, which was the kind of phrase Owen used when he meant something else entirely. He had brought his financial advisor, a man named Kenneth who kept adjusting his collar, and a lawyer I had never seen before. He had also brought our aunt and her husband, who sat along the wall like a jury he had pre-selected. I had brought one folder and a water bottle. She has made unilateral decisions about the rental property on Lakeshore. Owen continued, shuffling through his papers. She reduced the rental rate without consulting me. She declined 2 purchase offers without my knowledge, and she spent $40,000 on what she called maintenance without producing a single invoice. Our aunt nodded. Her husband nodded. Kenneth adjusted his collar again. I took a sip of water. Owen finally looked at me. Would you like to respond to any of that? Not yet, I said. You still have 9 minutes. He blinked. Then he kept going. I want to tell you something about the 18 months between my mother's death and that mediation session, because people assume that when a family falls apart over money, it happens in a single dramatic moment. It doesn't. It happens in 100 small moments first. It happens in the way Owen started calling me every Sunday to ask what I was doing with the property, the way he started CCing Kenneth on emails I sent him privately, the way he showed up unannounced at the Lakeshore house in March, walked through every room without asking, and then sent me a 2-page document listing concerns. The night he did that, I sat in my car in my own driveway for 20 minutes. I want you to understand something. I was not calm. I was not strategizing. I was genuinely, completely exhausted. I was 31 years old. I had been managing a property, filing estate taxes, fielding tenants' calls at 11 at night, grieving my mother, and doing all of it while Owen sent me weekly emails asking for documentation I had already sent him. I cried in that car. I'm telling you this because the version of me you're about to meet, the one with the folder, took a long time to become that person. And it wasn't because I was cold or calculated. It was because I had tried every other option first. I had tried talking to him. I had tried involving our aunt as a neutral party, which was when I discovered she was not neutral. I had tried a solicitor's letter, which Owen responded to by hiring his own solicitor and escalating to formal mediation. And somewhere in that process, I had stopped trying to fix the relationship and started paying very close attention instead. The reduced rental rate Owen was so upset about? The tenant was a 71-year-old woman named Mrs. Park who had been renting from my mother for 9 years. When I inherited the property, Owen immediately wanted to raise her rent by $800 a month and get current tenants off the lease, which is a polite way of saying he wanted to evict a 71-year-old woman so he could list the unit at market rate. I reduced her rate instead. I documented every conversation about it. I have 37 emails, 4 voicemails, and 1 very detailed letter from our mother's own solicitor confirming that the estate documents gave me discretionary authority over rental pricing during the administration period. The $40,000 in maintenance? I have invoices, permits, and a report from a licensed structural engineer confirming that the foundation had a drainage issue that, left unaddressed, would have reduced the property value by at least $200,000. I had 3 contractors quote it. I chose the middle bid. I have all of it. The purchase offers I declined? Both were from numbered companies with no public disclosure of ownership. I hired a title search firm. One of those companies traced back, through two holding layers, to a numbered Ontario corporation with a registered director, Kenneth Albright. Kenneth Albright, Owen's financial advisor, sitting 3 feet away from me, adjusting his collar. I had known about this for 4 months. I had said nothing. The core issue, Owen was saying now, is that she operates unilaterally, treats this estate like her personal project, and has demonstrated a consistent pattern of poor financial judgment that puts the entire asset base at risk. We are requesting that the mediator recommend a formal co-trustee arrangement with equal sign-off authority on all decisions going forward and a full audit of all expenditures since probate was granted. He sat back, satisfied. He looked at our aunt. She gave him a small nod. The mediator, a patient woman named Miss Vance, who had clearly seen this exact dynamic before, turned to me. "Would you like to respond now?" "Yes," I said. "Thank you." I opened the folder. I want to describe Owen's face in that moment. Not because I take pleasure in it. I genuinely don't, or at least I've stopped letting myself, but because you need to understand how certain he was. He looked like a man who had already won and was just waiting for the paperwork to confirm it. Relaxed jaw, easy posture, hand resting on the table. He had come in with a story about his unstable, impulsive little sister, and he had told it well, and he was ready for the ending he had written. He did not know I had rewritten it. "My brother has raised 3 specific concerns," I said, keeping my voice even. "The rental rate reduction, the maintenance expenditure, and the declined purchase offers. I'd like to address them in reverse order." I placed the title search report in front of Ms. Vance first. These are the results of a professional title search on the 2 companies whose purchase offers I declined. The first traces to a numbered corporation registered in Ontario. The second traces through a Saskatchewan holding company to the same Ontario registration. I paused. The registered director of that Ontario corporation is Kenneth Albright. I turned to look at Kenneth directly. He had stopped adjusting his collar. He had stopped moving entirely. "Mr. Albright," I said pleasantly, "also serves as my brother's financial advisor and was present at 2 of the 3 estate planning meetings where Owen advocated for a quick sale of the Lakeshore property. I did not find this to be a coincidence." Owen pushed back his chair. "That is completely—" "I'm not finished," I said, not loudly, just clearly. Miss Vance raised one hand and Owen stopped. I laid the maintenance documents down next. The engineer's report, the 3 contractor quotes, the permits, the completion certificate, the before and after foundation assessment. The $40,000 expenditure my brother characterized as reckless was emergency structural remediation that preserved an estimated $200,000 in property value. I have a licensed engineer's report confirming this. I have 3 competitive bids confirming I selected the most cost-effective option. And I have a clause in the estate administration documents drafted by my mother's own solicitor, confirming my discretionary authority to authorize urgent maintenance without co-signature. I put the solicitor's letter on top of the stack. Owen was very still now. "And regarding Mrs. Mundak Park," I continued, "my decision to maintain her current rental rate was made in accordance with my mother's written wishes." I placed a single page on the table. This is a letter my mother wrote to her solicitor 14 months before her death, specifically requesting that any administrator of the estate exercise consideration toward long-term tenants. It was attached to the estate file. Owen received a copy during probate. He chose not to include it in his submissions today. The room was quiet. Our aunt had stopped nodding. Miss Vance was reading the letter. Her expression, previously neutral, had shifted into something that looked a great deal like disapproval directed 2 seats to my left. Owen cleared his throat. "She's framing this selectively. The fundamental issue is still the pattern of unilateral. I have 47 documented attempts to consult you before making decisions," I said. "Emails, text messages, 2 voicemails, and 1 registered letter. Your average response time was 11 days. For the foundation repair, I gave you 4 days' notice before I had to commit to the contractor because the engineer had flagged a weather window. You didn't respond." I proceeded. The house did not sink into the ground. I heard our aunt's husband make a small sound. I didn't look at him. Owen leaned forward. He was shifting tactics. I could see it. Moving from confident to aggressive, which is what he does when confidence stops working. "You've clearly been building this case for months," he said, and the implication was obvious. Paranoid, obsessive, not normal. You've been treating your own brother like a legal adversary. He wanted me to get emotional. He needed me to, because emotion would validate the story he had been telling everyone about me. The unstable sister, the impulsive one, the one who couldn't be trusted. I had nothing to give him. I know what the gray rock method is because I spent 3 months reading everything I could find about high conflict family dynamics after Owen's fourth aggressive email. You become boring. You become flat. You respond to escalation with documentation and even tones. And you do not, under any circumstances, give them the scene they came for. It goes against every instinct. Every part of you wants to say, "Do you know what this has cost me? Do you know how many nights I dealt with this alone? Do you know I cried in my car?" You don't say any of it. I've been treating this process with the same diligence I'd apply to any significant financial and legal matter, I said. Which is what Mom asked us to do. Owen's jaw tightened. And then he did something I had been waiting for. He reached into the folder he had brought and pulled out a document I had never seen before. He passed it to Ms. Vance with the careful deliberateness of someone playing what they believe is an ace. "This," he said, "is a property management agreement signed by both parties 18 months ago, 1 week after probate was granted." He looked at me. "In it, my sister agreed to provide me with monthly financial reports, prior notice of all expenditures over $5,000, and joint approval on all lease modifications. She has been in breach of this agreement for 14 consecutive months." Miss Vance looked at the document. Then she looked at me. I recognized it. A week after our mother's funeral, Owen had brought me a stack of documents he said were standard estate administration forms. I was barely sleeping. I had been at the funeral home twice that week, at the solicitor's office once, and I was still responding to condolence messages. I signed them at his kitchen table while his wife made tea and his kids watched television in the next room, and I did not read every page closely enough because I trusted my brother and my mother had just died. That was the mistake that started everything. I sat with it for a moment. Across the table, Owen allowed himself a small smile. Our aunt shifted in her chair, reassessing. Kenneth seemed to have located his ability to breathe again. If that document held up the way Owen thought it would, 14 months of careful documentation meant nothing. Every decision I had made without his formal sign-off became a breach. The title search became irrelevant. The engineer's report became irrelevant. He could file for a co-trustee order and likely get it, and once he had equal signing authority, the Lakeshore property would be sold within 6 months to a buyer of his choosing for a price structured to benefit someone other than the estate. Miss Vance cleared her throat gently. "Ms." she began. "I recognize the document," I said. I watched Owen's smile settle into something more permanent, and my signature on it is genuine. He almost exhaled with relief. I reached into my folder and removed the last item inside it. A tabbed document, 12 pages, held together with a binder clip. "That agreement," I said, "was never filed with the estate solicitor. It was never disclosed during probate. It was not included in the estate administration record. Under Ontario's Estates Act and the terms of the probate grant, any side agreements affecting the administration of the estate must be disclosed to the court and to the estate solicitor within 30 days of signing." I placed my document in front of Ms. Vance. "This is the confirmation from the court that no such agreement was ever filed. This is the letter from Mom's solicitor confirming she was never informed of it. And this is the legal opinion I obtained 4 months ago when I first became aware that document might exist. I had suspected for months. The language Owen had started using in his emails, as per our agreement, your obligations under the arrangement we discussed, was too specific to be accidental. I had quietly hired an estates litigation lawyer to review every document I had signed in the weeks after probate. He had flagged 3 that were irregularly formatted. This was one of them. "An undisclosed side agreement that attempts to alter the terms of a probate grant is not enforceable," I said. "It may, however, constitute an attempt to improperly influence estate administration, which is why, approximately 6 weeks ago, I forwarded the document along with the title search results and a detailed timeline to the Ontario Ministry of the Attorney General's Estates Compliance Office." The room did not erupt. It got very, very quiet instead. Owen had stopped looking at Ms. Vance. He was looking at his lawyer, a young man named, I would later learn, Denton, who had apparently not been told about any of this. Denton was writing something on his notepad with the focused energy of a person trying very hard to appear composed. Our aunt stood up. I genuinely had not expected her to do that. This is a family matter, she said, her voice high and thin. This doesn't need to involve government offices and lawyers, and she's dragging our family name through. Please sit down, Miss Servod, Miss Perdee Mar, the aunt said, and the tone she used was the kind that doesn't get argued with. Our aunt sat down. I looked at Owen. He had aged in the last 4 minutes in a way that was difficult to watch. I want to be honest about that. There is no clean satisfaction in watching someone you grew up with understand that they have been caught, even when they deserve it. Even when you are the one they tried to bury, there is something that sits in your chest that is not quite triumph and not quite grief, and I have never found the right word for it. You tried to take control of something that was never yours to control, I said, and I kept my voice quiet because I wasn't performing anything anymore. I was just telling the truth. Mom structured the estate the way she did because she knew this would happen. She knew you. I spent 18 months trying to believe I was wrong about that, and the whole time you were buying the rope. Owen opened his mouth. Closed it. I'm not asking for a co-trustee arrangement, I told Ms. Vance. I'm asking for formal documentation of today's proceedings, a confirmation that the undisclosed agreement is void, and a recommendation that the estate solicitor review all documents Owen submitted during probate for completeness. Ms. Vance was already writing. There is one more thing. 3 days after the mediation session, I received a call from the estate's compliance office confirming they had opened a formal review of the purchase offer irregularities. Kenneth resigned as Owen's financial advisor that same week, though I only know this because our aunt called me, not to apologize, which I was not expecting, but to tell me I had gone too far and destroyed my relationship with Owen over money. I listened to her say it. I didn't argue. What I wanted to say and didn't was this: I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. Owen has not contacted me since the session. I don't know what he tells people. I assume it's a version of events where I am the villain, which is fine. I have stopped needing to correct other people's stories about me. That is a freedom I didn't know I could have. Mrs. Park is still in her apartment. Her lease was renewed for 2 years at the same rate. She sent me a card at Christmas with a small photo of the garden she keeps on her balcony. The lakeshore property is still standing. The foundation is solid. The drainage is excellent. I still drive past my mother's house sometimes. The one she lived in before she downsized. The one she lived in before she downsized. The one that isn't part of the estate. I don't stop. I just drive past and I think about the version of her that wrote that letter to her solicitor 14 months before she died. The one asking whoever came after her to please be kind to the people who had been loyal to her. She knew. She always knew. The strongest thing I ever did in that mediation room was not the folder. It wasn't the title search or the engineer's report or the filing with the AG's office. It was the 47 emails I had sent my brother trying to include him, every one of which he had ignored, every one of which I had kept. You can't manufacture a paper trail like that. You can only build it by genuinely trying for a very long time before you finally understand that some people don't want a resolution. They want to surrender. I didn't surrender. And I'm still here. I've thought a lot about what the word fair actually means, not in a legal sense. I spent enough time in estate documents to know that fairness and legality are 2 different rooms in the same building. I mean fair in the way a 10-year-old means it. The instinctive, gut-level sense that things should balance out eventually, that the people who do the work should get the credit, that the ones who lie loudly enough shouldn't just win because no one bothered to write anything down. For a long time, I was angry that I had to become the kind of person who writes everything down. Owen didn't have to. Owen sent vague emails and made phone calls he knew I couldn't prove, and showed up at properties with his financial advisor and called it concern. He got to play the part of the reasonable older sibling who was simply worried, simply trying to help, simply looking out for the family's best interests. And I had to spend 18 months building a paper trail just to prove I existed in my own mother's estate. That's not fair. I'm not going to pretend it is. But here's what I've come to understand. Slowly, and not without some bitterness, the paper trail wasn't just evidence. It was character. Every email I sent trying to include Owen, every time I documented a decision instead of just making it, every invoice I filed in a folder I thought I might never need, that was me deciding over and over again what kind of person I was going to be in this. Not for Owen, not even for the mediator, for myself. Because at the end of it, whatever happened, I needed to be able to look at what I had done and not feel ashamed of it. Owen couldn't say the same. Kenneth couldn't say the same. That is a consequence. Not a dramatic one, not the kind they make movies about. But it is real. The choices we make in private. The shortcuts, the small dishonesties, the moments where we decide that what we want matters more than what is true, those accumulate. They compound. Owen spent years constructing a version of me that served his narrative, and in doing so, he stopped paying attention to what I was actually doing. That was his real mistake, not the undisclosed agreement, not the non-disclosed agreement, not the numbered corporations. The mistake was deciding I wasn't worth watching. I think about Mrs. Park sometimes when I need to remember why any of this mattered. She didn't know what was happening. She just knew someone had decided she was worth keeping. That one decision, to reduce her rent instead of raise it, to choose a person over a profit margin, cost me nothing that mattered and gave her 2 more years of stability in the home she'd had for nearly a decade. My mother would have done the same thing. I know that because she said so, in writing, 14 months before she died. I used to think intelligence meant knowing the angles, knowing what leverage you have and when to use it. Owen thought that too, but I've come to think the smarter thing, the genuinely harder thing, is knowing which fights to document and which people to protect, and understanding that those two instincts are not in conflict. You can be rigorous and still be decent. You can build a case and still leave Mrs. Park's rent alone. Those things coexist. The resilience part is quieter than people expect. It doesn't feel like strength when you're in it. It feels like exhaustion and another email to send and one more folder to organize while your brother ignores your calls. It only looks like strength from the outside after the fact, when the mediator is reading your documents and the room has gone still. In the moment, it just feels like continuing, like deciding one more time not to stop. Owen has not called. I don't expect him to. Some things don't reconcile, and that is its own kind of answer. I'm still here. The house is still standing, and I know exactly who I was throughout all of it. That's enough.